Commission meeting for May 1st, 2018. For those that have not had the pleasure of attending one of our meetings before, just a little bit of housekeeping. If we could all turn off our cell phones, that would be most appreciated. Also, after we do the roll, we approve the minutes from the last meeting, and then we go on to the items of the agenda. The way it works is the city staff will present on an item, and then right after they're done presenting, it's opened up just to the commission for technical questions. Once we're done with our technical questions, we open it up to the public. If you'd like to have a comment or a question, please step up to the microphone and state your name and address for the minutes. Once all public folks have had the opportunity to speak, we close public comment, bring it back to the commission for discussion, and then a vote. Also, I've been told that the workshops that were planned for today are postponed. So you can take those off our agenda. With that, let us call the roll. Mina?
Kathleen Propp,
Here?
David Borsick, Ed Bowen, Steve Cummings,
Here.
Michael Ford, John Hintz,
Here.
John Kiefer, Robert Bygart,
Here.
Thomas Perry,
Here.
Andrew Mott,
Here.
Tom Foytek.
Here. Moving on to the approval of the minutes from April 17th. Do we have any additions, corrections, deletions? Anything to add?
Move to approve. Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? All right, moving on to item number 1. Accept sidewalk,
I wasn't here.
accept sidewalk, traffic signal, and signage easements on South Main Street at 14th Avenue, South Park Avenue, and 11th Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The City of Oshkosh is requesting acceptance of easements on the South Main Street intersections at 14th Avenue, South Park Avenue, and 11th Avenue. So here's a view of the easement at the intersection of West 11th Avenue and the easements at the intersection of South Park Avenue and 14th Avenue. The city plans to install ADA compliant sidewalk at these locations, along with public traffic control poles, signals, wiring, and related public sidewalk necessary to access and utilize any traffic control features that may be located on the traffic control poles. The proposed easements are needed for these features due to the narrowness of the existing public right-of-ways. So here's a closer view of the easement at the intersection of 11th as well as South Park and the other two corners at South Park and 14th. And the Department of Public Works does not have concerns with the proposal and will work with the property owners to have appropriate easement documents signed and recorded with the Winnebago County Register of Deeds. And staff recommends approval of the acceptance of the proposed easements as requested.
All right, thank you. Any technical questions from the commission, John?
First, just kind of a housekeeping note before you put it before the council. You might want to fix, you have an extra A in easements on your first three windows.
Easement?
Yeah, easements. That's just a housekeeping thing for you. Why are we not considering easements for future signals on 14th for when we get development on Pioneer Drive and whatnot? Instead of just the one corner, why are we not looking at all the corners for potential future?
Why aren't we not, go back to the map. So we're just looking at, I don't know, this project was originated by Public Works, so I don't have an actual reason for you on this one, John. We can certainly find it out.
It just seemed like we've been forward thinking, especially with things like this in the past. I thought it would make sense here because we're looking at having that developed out there.
Yep, I'll
Right.
make a note.
Other technical questions?
Steve just walked in.
Oh, hold on, Steve just showed up, so we can, Steve, can you
Steve,
come
I'll
on?
We have a question
Steve, I'll
for you,
repeat it
sir.
for you.
Make sure my phone is set to vibrate here. There we go.
Is there a reason we're only looking at doing an easement on one corner of 14th with the possible looking at development out at the Pioneer property in that whole area I'm guessing we'd be looking at signals at that intersection. Why wouldn't we be forward thinking and getting easements on all the corners?
We were unable to get one at the southeast corner at this point in time with the development that's going on there and the Davis Paint site uncertainty what's going to happen there. So we weren't able to acquire the easement there yet. I'm sorry, it's Davis Paint on South Park. Davis Paint South Park, isn't it?
Yeah, Davis, right here.
Okay, sorry. So the school district property on the south, property on the south,
a school district into residentials?
At this time, we weren't doing a full reconstruct down there, so we hadn't gone in to look for those easements. The likelihood of a signal there is very, very small. Given the proximity to South Park, they would be too close together to put a signal at that intersection.
So if that develops out by the Pioneer, we're not, you only have 6th and 14th as your ways in and out. That's why, that was my,
The grand plan for that area is to actually have 9th to
Okay.
Pioneer Drive, so that 9th would be the main
that makes sense.
entrance.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, sir. I think we're done. Any other technical questions? All right, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Once? Twice? Okay, back to the commission.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
John Hintz,
Aye.
Robert Weigart,
Aye.
Thomas Perry,
Yes.
Andrew Mott,
Aye.
Kathleen Pratt,
Aye.
Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Steve Cummings,
Aye.
Thomas Voitek.
Aye.
Motion carried,
All right.
8-0.
All right, moving on to item number 2, extraterritorial final plat for Sand Hill Farms 2, located in the town of Omro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
This is a request for approval of a final plat located in the town of Omro. The subject site is located approximately 3 miles from the city limits and actually only clips the southeast corner of the development, but since it does fall within our extraterritorial review boundary, we are subject to reviewing it. The developer submitted a preliminary plat about a year ago, and then moving forward with final platting of Phase 2 of Sand Hill Farms, which is a 82-lot final plat and 3 additional outlots. Because the city subdivision, or because of the plat is extraterritorial, the city's subdivision regulations pertaining to the design of the subdivision do not apply. We can only review the plat on the basis of being consistent with the city's comprehensive land use plan. In this case, the city's comp plan recommends for residential, and obviously with the proposed subdivision, that is consistent with our comprehensive plan. The Department of Public Works, there's a copy of the plat. The Department of Public Works reviewed the proposed plat and just is making a suggestion with Outlot 3, which is a long sliver, about 500 feet long, and then widens to about 15 feet wide. Their suggestion is to incorporate that long sliver into this proposed street right-of-way. Otherwise, it creates kind of a spite strip in the subdivision. So that information will be forwarded to the developer and Winnebago County. And with that, staff recommends a finding that the proposed subdivision is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and be approved.
All right, thank you, sir. Technical questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Going once? Twice? Okay, public comment is closed. Back to the commission.
Motion approved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call a roll.
John Hintz,
Aye.
Robert Weigart,
Aye.
Thomas Perry,
Aye.
Andrew Mott,
Aye.
Kathleen Pratt,
Aye.
Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Steve Cummings,
Aye.
Thomas Voitek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Item number 3, residential design standards variance to allow door and window size reductions on the front facade at 423 West 9th Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for item 3, the applicant wants to reduce the size, will close off a door and do a window size reduction on the front facade at 423 West 9th Avenue. It's a residential property. Here you can see the subject site, so in blue, and then this site, along with the sites or the properties immediately around it, are all zoned TR10 2-flat residential. Most of this, as you can see, is residential around beyond the immediate surroundings of the site. It's all residential. There are a few manufacturing areas over to the west. Those are zoned UMU, urban mixed use. So basically, here's the Google image of the property in question. So what the applicant wants to do is they want to close off this door here, and they want to reduce the size of this window opening here. And I'll kind of get into detail, a little bit more detail as far as why they want to do that. As you know, applicable ordinance prohibits the closure of door openings. We treated this, it's a side facade technically, but it's within the first 20 feet. And then we also, this is obviously a front facade window here, so they'd be reducing it more than 10%, and that's prohibited by ordinance, so they came in for a variance. This here kind of gives you a sense of the sizes of the openings, so I pretty much took it and labeled it. What they want to do is they want to eliminate this door, and I'll show you kind of what it'll look like after, but it's a 32-inch by 80-inch door. And the reason they want to close this door off is because there's two front doors basically side by side from the front porch. And they didn't think that this one would be necessary if they're going to maintain this door here. They're actually looking to expand the width of this door here. Right now, I think it's a 32-inch by 80-inch door, so standard size. They want to go to a 36-inch by 80-inch door, so keeping the same height, but then extending the width. This window here would be reduced in size, so it would be a few inches, give or take a few inches, different from this bedroom opening here, which they would replace. This one here would be, what I'll do is I'll show you. It would be more in line with that opening up there. So they would replace these windows. They'd replace a lot of these windows here. Same size, same location. Expand this door here, close off the door that was shown on the side wall of the porch. And then this one would be reduced to roughly a 60-inch by 48-inch opening. So it's a few inches off width and height from this bedroom window, but not so far off that it would, in our opinion, have a major impact and be inconsistent with the size of this window visually. This kind of gives you a sense of what they want to do. Staff is recommending approval of a variance from the residential design standards to allow for these reductions with the conditions that the window and the door trim would match the color and appearance of the existing windows on the home. So for any windows that they replace or reduce, or for the door expansion, that trim would be consistent. The applicant would install siding in any areas closed. So that door opening, that siding would be installed in a manner consistent with the existing siding on the home. Similar color, similar lap sizes and everything. We don't want to see a patchwork appearance for that siding. The applicant would center the new living room window. So if I go back, that's this window here. They would center this window on the center line of this bedroom window that exists and would be maintained. And that would be to maintain the architectural harmony and consistency so that we don't have windows that are mismatched in terms of placement. The applicant would ensure that the ground floor living room windows and upstairs bedroom windows maintain a similar or compatible style and appearance to one another. So not just the trim, but thinking about if you're doing two double hungs perhaps for the upstairs, do you do that for the downstairs? Having at least styles that would be visually similar. They don't necessarily have to be double hungs per se, but the windows should be compatible. And there is some room for interpretation there, but it's something that we wanted to kind of address with our conditions here. Going into further conditions, conferring with the city's inspections division to ensure that the proposed second floor replacements comply with any egress and light and ventilation requirements. When I talked to the inspections division, they mentioned that the window opening must be a minimum of 8% of the floor area of the room for light and ventilation. So if they're just doing a direct replacement, as long as they maintain that 8% area, it sounds like they will be okay, but I want them to confer with inspections on that. applicant will also maintain all the window openings other than the ground floor living room window, and obviously closing off that door, all the window openings would be maintained at the same size, same location as existing. And then we found that the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because the decrease of window area would not adversely affect the architectural integrity, the neighborhood character or curb appearance of the block. I did kind of go back and forth, you know, in a perfect world, maybe they would maintain that living room window that was previously there. It is a nice bigger window. I don't know, I don't think they provided a rationale for closing or for decreasing the size of this. But if they're here, they might be able to speak to that. Otherwise, you know, we didn't think that if they reduced it or closed a little bit of it off, that it would be a huge detriment. So that's essentially what we're recommending, and be open to any
All right.
questions.
Technical questions from the commission. Ed?
So we've done a lot of these, obviously. This is the first one that we've seen that 8% of floor area for egress and light. Is that, I guess, is this a new piece of code? Is this something that we're just sort of coordinating now with inspections to learn a little more about? Is this going to be something we're going to see kind of standard on these types of requests going forward? I'm generally supportive of what we're seeing here. I'm just more trying to understand where that condition is coming from because we haven't seen that put on these before.
That's one thing that I know, I had a previous design standards variance where we had to look at egress purposes or egress considerations. So I'm trying to coordinate with them.
Okay.
Just to make sure, because I don't want to recommend something that perhaps I'm overlooking a building code thing.
Right.
And then building code consideration, and then all of a sudden, hey, we approve it here, then they go back to inspections and find out that
And they can't get it.
it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to include inspections to make sure. I asked them about this one because this is a direct replacement,
Okay.
rather than like in the last one that I had where I addressed building code issues, they raised the sill height.
Yeah, I remember that one.
So they were doing new windows, I mean, they're doing new windows here, but they were doing new opening sizes.
Sure.
That's why I didn't do double hung for recommendations for that, because from an egress standpoint, it wouldn't work. So this one, I think I was told that as long as, if they maintain the current opening, as long as they maintain that light and ventilation consideration, they'd be okay. If they were decreasing it, I think we'd have to look at the 24 by
Okay.
20-inch clear space.
So this gets into more, you know, generally what we've regulated previously has been primarily exterior facades, aesthetic appeal, all that sort of stuff. This does venture into a little bit more, you know, you got to understand what the cube is in terms of how much floor space you have in the room. Does that change how you guys are you going to be reviewing that going forward, or is this just a condition you think we're going to see on these generally as we work through this type of request?
It's one thing that I know for me, I've been trying to consider,
Sure.
just with my, you know, I know some of my architectural background too. Just trying to make sure that I'm recommending something that is accounting for everything.
Okay.
possible. So if I'm working on these, and if, Darren, if you're okay with it.
I have a feeling nobody else is going to be working on these. I think they're all yours.
So, I mean, if I have
And
my
you
way-
do great on these, by the way.
Yep,
This
you
has
do.
been fantastic. These drawings have been really, really helpful. So I really want to hats off to you on that. So I was more just curious about how we're looking at this going forward.
It's more of a coordination between, the building code requirement's always there.
Yeah.
But we wanted to make sure it didn't get forgot when it went over
Right.
to the.
That's
to
why I
the
wasn't sure.
inspection.
Is this, was this a new, quirk of some code update that happened in Madison that we're now understanding a little bit better? But it sounds like it's kind of always been there. We're just
More
allowing.
proactive.
Okay.
More proactive this time because like Steven said, we didn't want to approve a variance and
Yeah.
ultimately go across the hall and you can't get it because they've
Yeah.
fallen below the
Yeah.
standard.
Understood.
So it's an internal matter
Yep.
It is.
amongst these.
For the most part, it's just an attempt to give you and the applicant more information. A lot of these we've conditioned with a simple statement of must comply with all building code
Right.
requirements.
Just getting a little more
We're
specific.
just trying to be a little more specific, make sure you understand and the applicant, when you get to that part of the review, understand what we're talking about.
Okay.
Kind of like, expanding on it a little more than what we've done in the past.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Other technical questions? Seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Okay, back to the commission.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Kathy?
I just think it's going to make a big difference. It'll be a great improvement to do this.
I agree. Other comments? All right, let's call the roll.
John Hintz,
Aye.
Robert Weigart,
Aye.
Thomas Perry,
Aye.
Andrew Mott,
Aye.
Kathleen Pratt,
Aye?
Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Steve Cummings,
Aye.
Thomas Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion approved 8-0.
Okay, item number 4. Item number 4, specific implementation plan amendment for a mixed-use site located at 851 South Main Street.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So this is for a plan development amendment for the former Miles Kimball site. In 2008, a plan development was approved for the entire block bounded by South Main Street, 8th, 9th, and Nebraska. A multifamily development was approved for the western portion of the site and renovation of the Miles Kimball site for the eastern portion. The multifamily development was developed and the Miles Kimball building was never renovated. The Miles Kimball site is about 8.83 acres in size and includes a 4-story structure that was formerly used for light manufacturing and industrial purposes, which is still vacant. The surrounding area is a mix of industrial, commercial, and residential uses. And here's an aerial view of the site. And the original plan development approval from 2008 was for renovation of the site for commercial use on the ground floor and residential units on floors 2 through 4, as well as an optional ground floor patio. The applicant is now proposing 2 tenant spaces on the first floor. There will be either retail space, will be either restaurant or retail space, along with 2 patios on the south side of the building, office spaces on floors 2 through 4, and a rooftop addition for a bar and patio area. These uses are all permitted in the central mixed-use district and consistent with the city's 10 and 20-year comprehensive land use plans. The proposed renovation meets the guidelines of the South Shore East redevelopment area and is generally consistent with the approved plan development for the site, with minor changes and use of the building. The petitioner is proposing various revisions to the approved site design, including 3 building additions are being proposed. One is a mechanical room on the northwest corner of the building, a glass enclosed stair and elevator tower on the west side, and a glass enclosed stair tower on the south side. Also, 2 concrete patios are proposed on the south side of the building, and those will have a wood-framed pergola over each of them. The petitioner is proposing a reduction of parking area from 52 spaces to 40 spaces. Staff does not have concerns with that change, as the CMU district does not require off-street parking. Also, the change from residential units to office spaces should result in lesser demand for off-street parking spaces. The dumpster enclosure is being proposed for the northwest corner of the parking area, and a base standard modification is required, as that is in a front yard area. Staff is supportive of that base standard modification, as the proposed location, or as the dumpster enclosure has minimal allowable areas that have access for a dumpster. Also, a loading zone is not included on the site plan. The applicant did note that the delivery trucks will likely access the site with the same route and turning radius as refuse pickup trucks. Also, street parking is allowed on West 8th Avenue, which will allow for any deliveries made from a semi to be made via wheeled dolly from West 8th Avenue. So a base standard modification will be required, as code requires a designated loading area for the site. Staff is supportive of this base standard modification, as large deliveries should be relatively infrequent. As for lighting, the photometric plan exceeds the maximum allowable lighting level along the northeast, southeast, and south property lines, and I did not include the lighting plan as part of the PowerPoint. But staff is supportive of the base standard modification, as the areas that exceed the lighting standard only spill over into the public right-of-way rather than adjoining properties. Here's the landscape plan. The central mixed-use district is exempt from landscaping requirements. However, When paved areas are provided, they must meet the paved area requirements. And the landscape plan is missing. Trees at the end row is here, here, and here, but that can be addressed during the site plan review process. As far as stormwater, the Department of Public Works reviewed the plans and noted that the project must demonstrate that the water quality treatment and stormwater management system for the adjoining property to the west is not adversely impacted by this project, and this can also be addressed during the site plan review process. Preliminary signage plans were submitted. You can see on these elevations. The code allows for 1 square foot of signage per linear foot of building frontage, and they are exceeding that in all 3 frontages that they're proposing, which are the north, south, and east elevations. So we will require them to meet that code standard, and that can be addressed under a separate building permit for signage. The proposed building facades will be similar to what was originally approved, with some minor changes. That includes the new glass enclosed stair and elevator towers added on the south and west facades. So you can see here in the south facade, this glass enclosed stair tower, and the west facade here, the glass enclosed stair and elevator tower. And here's that west facade with the stair and elevator tower. The petitioner also notes that eyebrow details have been added over the new windows for the first floor tenant spaces, and new punched windows along the north and south facades have been revised to create better rhythm and symmetry. Canopies have been added to the north and west facades, and these are needed to identify entrances, and the patio areas will include wood-framed open-air pergolas. Encroachment agreements will be required for portions of the pergolas and canopies as they extend over the right-of-way along the east and southeast property lines. The proposed rooftop addition will be consistent with the materials of the building and also includes wood pergolas over the patio area. The CMU standards state that the height of buildings shall be compatible with existing buildings in the immediate area, which conform to the design theme of the area as determined by Plan Commission. As the overall building height is being increased, it is up to Plan Commission to determine if the proposal is consistent with the buildings in the immediate area. And staff is supportive of the proposed changes to the building plan, as the additions and revisions seem to only enhance the appearance of the facade. And on the left, we have a view from the northwest, and on the right, we have a view from the southwest. And on the left, we have a view from the northeast, and on the right, a view from the southeast. And staff is supportive of the approval of the SIP amendment with the following conditions: a base standard modification to allow a dumpster enclosure between the building and public street, a base standard modification to allow a commercial use without a designated loading area, a base standard modification to allow lighting levels to exceed 0.5 foot candles at the northeast, southeast, and south property lines. Final landscaping plan be approved by the Department of Community Development, and encroachment agreement be drafted for pergolas and canopies extending over the public right-of-way and recorded with the Winnebago County Register of Deeds.
All right, thank you. Technical questions, friends? Okay, seeing none. Anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, tell us your name and address, please, and let us know what you think.
Hi, my name's Eric Drazkowski, 100 Camelot Drive with Excel Engineering. I worked on the site plans. Thank you, good presentation. Two things I just want to add to the recommendations, and just for clarification points, is for item number 5, I would like to add the existing eyebrows and signage. On Main Street side, on the east side, the existing eyebrows overhang the property line because it's only an inch away from the front face of the building. And then the signage, of course, will hang off. So I just want to make sure that's included. And then I also need to ask that the one patio is within the 5-foot setback, pavement setback on the southeast corner. Is that going to need a variance, or is that just for parking and drive aisles?
I think that refers to paved areas, and we applied the principal building setback, which in the CMU there is no required setback.
Okay. All right. Very good. That's all I have.
All right. Time for a question. If anybody has any questions for the petitioner? Yes.
I just want to make one comment.
more
Stuff that's
detail
going on
on
with the arena and everything. This is a beautiful building.
Okay,
Love
thank you.
the glassed-in staircases with the elevator. I think it's gonna really help that area start to really grow.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else for the petitioner? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? All right, seeing none, back to the commission.
I make a motion to accept and approve this.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
John Hintz,
Aye.
Robert Weigart,
Aye.
Thomas Perry,
Aye.
Andrew Mott,
Aye.
Kathleen Pratt,
Aye.
Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Steve Cummings,
Aye.
Thomas Foytek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Moving on to item number 5, zone change from neighborhood mixed-use district to neighborhood mixed-use district with plan development overlay and approval of a general development plan and specific implementation plan for property located at 129 West 17th Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have a kind of twofold request today. One, to change the zoning from the existing neighborhood mixed-use district to neighborhood mixed-use district with a plan development overlay. Here you can see the subject parcel. We have a surrounding mix of single and two-family uses around the kind of commercial corner of the property. This property was previously a bar that had a multifamily development behind it. In 2014, that rear portion, that multifamily side of the structure, had a fire and burned and was subsequently demolished. So here's kind of the site. Here you can see kind of the portion of the block building that remained after the fire. And kind of this light brown area, you can see that's where the multifamily structure previously sat that was burned and demolished. So here with the site plan, the applicant is seeking the zone change because presently under the neighborhood mixed-use district, you're limited to a 4-unit building. You are not allowed to do any type of multifamily that exceeds 4 units. The applicant is proposing an 8-unit building that would encompass the existing structure plus the remodeled structure. Usually in the neighborhood mixed-use district, we have significantly smaller parcels. This is a very large parcel for our neighborhood mixed-use zoning district. So in staff's opinion, the requested base standard and zone change to allow that 8-unit building does fit because this is a much larger parcel than we traditionally would deal with. It only gives us a density of a little over 4 units per acre, which for a multifamily development is a very low units per acre count. So the applicant is proposing to construct kind of onto the back side of the existing structure and then remodel the existing structure as well. They're also proposing a 8-stall garage as well as 8 additional surface parking areas. So the proposed development does meet the parking requirements. Our code requires 2 parking spaces per multifamily unit, and they do have the 16 spaces as required. Right now, the development has 2 access points, kind of one on each side of the building. The applicant is proposing to maintain the existing 24-foot opening on the west side of the structure. On the east side, the drive aisle and access driveway would be removed. That would be returned to city standards for curb, and that would be turned into green space. Stormwater management plans, some very minimal plans have been provided by the applicant, and the Department of Public Works was reviewing them. The applicant does need to have further discussions with the Department of Public Works regarding their stormwater management plan, and during the final site plan review process, we'll need to get those finalized. They did provide some of the current surface drainage situation out there, but Department of Public Works does need some additional information and calculations from them, so they will have to work that out prior to any final approvals. The applicant has required a total of 432 foundation landscaping points for the project. They're coming in at about 470, so they do exceed their minimum foundation planting requirements. No new pavement is being added, so they are not required additional parking or paved area screening. However, the applicant is intending to include about 75 points worth of additional landscaping around the paved area. Street frontage requirements, the applicant is currently deficient on their proposed plan. They show about 94 points, and 130 points are required, so they will need to add some additional landscaping prior to their final approval for the street frontage. Finally, a buffer yard landscaping is required as this is adjacent to a different zoning district to the southeast and a little bit on the southwest. The buffer requirement between these two districts is a 0.2% opacity buffer yard, which requires 140 points per 100 feet of frontage with a 35-foot setback. That totals out to needing about 1,502 perimeter landscaping points for that buffer yard, and the applicant's coming in with about 1,889. As you can see, they're trying to buffer quite a bit that residential area surrounding them. Example sign drawings have been provided by the applicant. They're showing about a 3'11" tall sign by 10-foot long monument sign. NMU district requires maximum allotment of 25 square feet of sign area. So their final signage plans will need to meet that. As indicated now, they do meet it, but we'll handle those final signage plans on our separate building application, and they will have to be code compliant. The applicant has not provided a site lighting plan. So as part of their final site plan review process, they will be required to submit that photometric plan for staff to review to ensure they do not meet exceed the 0.5 candlelight at the property lines. In terms of building facades, here we can see their proposed building facades. For multifamily development, the code requires that the building be clad in either class 1, 2, or 3. So that's anywhere from brick and stone through our vinyl siding materials. The applicant is proposing to keep the existing brick portion of the building that's clad in brick, and then transition to the newer portion of the building, a combination of two different styles of vinyl siding. Staff looked at the surrounding area. The development to the west of it, which is kind of a bar banquet hall with some residential above it, is similar in nature. It's all clad in vinyl siding. And as you get into the residential area, it's mostly vinyl siding. So staff felt it does kind of match what's already in the area in terms of a largely vinyl sided building. One issue they do have with the plan is currently the refuse enclosure is only shown at about 2 feet from the property line. Minimum code requirement is 5 feet. So staff is recommending a condition be placed on this, that they move that dumpster enclosure to meet that minimum 5-foot setback requirement. The enclosure itself meets the code requirements in terms of material and screening. It just doesn't meet setback and needs to be shifted over. With that, the staff is recommending approval of both the zone change, the general development plan, and the specific implementation plan, with the findings listed in the staff report as well as the conditions below. Dumpster enclosure shall be relocated a 5-foot setback. Final landscaping be approved by the Department of Community Development. Basically, we want to make sure they pick up those landscaping points that they're deficient on that street frontage. And then we do recommend that the base standard modification be granted to allow the 8-unit apartment building, as it is a very large parcel for what we traditionally see in this zoning district.
Thank you, sir. Technical questions, Kathy, Ed, John.
As you said, it's a very large parcel, and this is all being built on the north end. And so there's a large space remaining in the middle of the block. Is that
The applicant's,
potentially developable?
yeah, the
or
applicant's
not?
thrown around some ideas of what they are considering doing
Like
back
green
there.
space?
But right now, it's going to be green space. They have no immediate plans for development of that.
Is there, would it be legal with the driveway would extend into that area so that they could develop it?
There are some issues with how that can be developed. Say they wanted to build additional single-family or duplexes or multifamily down there. Is you start to, if they wanted to separate it into additional lots, they would have some issues getting water service, as water service requires an individual parcel, and they couldn't get frontage back there. So there is, I mean, it is developable land possibly in the future. It may be a little tough, but there are ways that they can do it. I think that's partly why they're not ready to develop that portion of the parcel yet. They'd like to get this development underway and then kind of weigh their options of what possibly could be done back there. We've heard that they're considering single-family, possibly duplexes. They don't really know exactly what they want to do back there at this time.
That would require extending a private water lateral.
Possibly, it would
and
really
spur
depend on exactly what they wanted to accomplish back there.
lateral. Okay. All right, thank you.
Come back through
And they
this.
will have to come back through here now that we've got the plan development, or proposing the plan development in place, they would have to bring anything back as an amended, specific implementation plan for this board.
Ed and then John.
I guess this is more of maybe a logistical question. We're essentially looking at 3 items here. We've got a zone change, we've got a GDP approval, and we have an SIP approval. Are we required to vote on all three of them as one package, or would there be a mechanism by which we can separate these to vote on each piece as a standalone?
I mean, the GDP and SIP are really pretty close. I mean, if you got to the SIP level, theoretically, you've already gotten, the SIP is more specific than, specific.
Well, I know that, like, the requirements of the SIP, for instance, are more geared towards, elevations,
Correct.
aesthetic, that sort of thing, whereas the GDP tends to be, is this building massing acceptable on the site? It's sort of more along those lines, which
I got you, I see where you're going.
I guess that's kind of where I'm going with that. Is that, I don't know if that's something that we are able to do or not do, or if this is a all or nothing, up or down kind of
It's
thing.
acceptable, the zone change, yeah, I think it's, if that's how the plan commission would like to vote separately on the items, I think.
I don't know how the plan commission feel, I know how I feel.
I think it's acceptable, I don't
And,
know.
I mean, there's always.
I just
an op-
wasn't sure if we were obligated to do it as a part.
There's always an opportunity if, to work with the applicant and maybe move the zone change forward if you're comfortable with the idea of the PD being put in place. And if there's maybe some additional information or changes you want to make to the SIP, it may benefit the petitioner to just wait on the whole GDP SIP as one and bring
Got
it
it.
back to you for changes, if that's something that, this commission and the applicant want to, discuss.
Okay, thanks.
John?
Before I ask my question, I just want to address real quick what you were asking about, Kathy. If you go one block to the south where Hughes Candy is, they actually own the entire middle of that entire block all the way up to the houses on Oregon Street.
Oh.
So that's not something that's unusual in that area, because I live
Okay.
on Brockway, which is just a block and a half from where this is, so.
Oh, okay.
Kind of know the neighborhood. But just so you know, it's not unusual for a property to have like the big swath of the middle of the block, because the blocks are so wide and deep.
Yeah, you can kind of see by the aerial up here, there's some different lot configurations in that area than we see in most of
Yeah,
most parts
it's
of the
interesting
city.
over there.
There's no rules on the south side.
My question then, my technical question is, is there gonna be fencing required along that west side? Cause I didn't actually hear you mention it,
No,
as far as
there-
along the Witzke's property there with the,
Along
yeah.
along here.
North and south, yeah, that line right there.
No, this is adjacent to NMU zone, and it would not be any fencing
So there,
requirement.
okay. I was-
Yeah, they're proposing to meet their buffer yard requirements through landscaping and spacing, not
Okay.
fencing.
Okay.
So is that the same with the property to the east?
Yep, their proposal is to meet it through the landscaping and buffering requirements. When you get into our opacity tables, it lays out several options of how you can meet a buffer yard. Fencing is one of them. Usually it kind of goes, if you have fencing, less landscaping, or you can increase the landscaping for some non-fencing options and increasing your development setbacks.
So they're proposing landscaping, it's grass or?
So the code does not specifically say where your landscaping has to go. It just gives you a point total. Sorry, I went the wrong way here.
Because they have it around the empty lot.
So they're right now providing their landscaping around the perimeter of the lot. Right now, they are not showing a lot of landscaping here, as there is a fence on the adjacent neighbor's property. This plan commission could definitely, and I think it's well within their purview, to look at maybe requiring a fence or more landscaping along this east property line as part of the plan development. They meet the minimum requirements, but as this body knows, you can require them to go above and beyond that if you wish.
Other technical questions? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? We've got a couple people. Come on up, sir. State your name and address and tell us what you think.
Yeah, hi, my name is Joe Novotny. I live at 1731 Doty Street. If you were to bring back up the map, I can show you where I am.
Sorry.
Could you do
Bring up
that?
the map
Yes.
with the aerial.
Yeah, where the blue is, you see the L-shaped property just to the east of that. That's my neighbor, and I'm at 1731, second from the bottom on the left there. Yep, that'd be me. I'm here for selfish reasons. There's no two ways about it. I like the view out in my backyard. I'd like to keep it. The current owner of the property wishes to put up an 8-plex. That's all he's telling us. That's all he's showing us. He doesn't know what he's going to do in the future. By the size of the property and by the diagram that you've just seen, there's room for a couple more back there. If you look just to the south of that, you'll see Betty's property. She's got a little over an acre there. If you look to the north where Doty Street is, where Mr. Pollock lives, which is the property that borders the property that wants the zoning change, if that property along with Betty's property were purchased, it would almost double the size of that property. You could have 6 or 7 of them back there in a heartbeat. I'm not saying that's what he wants to do. I'm saying that is a possibility. I can't keep my backyard. I can't look out my back door and see what I'm seeing now. Now I understand that he's invested money into this, and you know, I wouldn't want him to lose on it. That wouldn't be right. The city does have property that they need developers for. I'm thinking, hey, this guy wants to do something. Why doesn't he get with the city, or the city get with him, or they get together and maybe come up with something in an area where they're looking for a developer? Seems to work hand in hand. Maybe he can trade this property for a piece of that other property, either in like size or value. He can still do the development of some kind. Everybody's happy there. The city gets a developer where they need them. The city ends up with an acre and 1.6 acres. Well, the city also needs green space. Be a great place to have some more green space. The city owns it. Why not? Make it a park. There's plenty of small parks in this town. This is 1.6 acres. There's a couple of them that would even be smaller. However, I would request that the current owner of the property, because he may have some value as far as the piece itself, retain naming rights to the park. The place has been the VFW Hall since 1952, 60 plus years. I've kicked around a couple of names in my head as far as what the park could be called. Veterans Park is about as good as I can come up with. It holds with the tradition of the land, gives the city green space. The guy gets to do a development in an area where the city needs it. I get to keep my view. I'm here for selfish reasons. I admit it. I don't know who all would need to be contacted, where they are, when they would be available. I'm just saying this is an alternative. I guess at this point I'm not asking you to deny him or approve him. I'm asking you to table it until we can explore this option. That's all I'm asking for.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Come on up, sir.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Bob Mackey. I live at 122 South, or 122 West 17th Avenue, and I live almost directly across the street from the old VFW building. I look out there and I see 1952 on it. That's a pretty popular year. That was the year I was born, so it was a good year. But I'll tell you, if you could pull up a couple of pictures here real quick. Could you back up to the one that shows the garage and the driveway back there? Yeah, okay, if you'll notice, the garage does not go all the way to the fence. It aligns with the driveway coming in. I looked at this, I downloaded this from the city's website. So why would we be doing that? Well, that's because you want to have access to that space back there. And trust me, the objective is to build this, and once they've got that built, is to go ahead and start building more back there. Okay? My house is zoned for a family or a 2-flat. All the houses in my neighborhood are zoned as a family or a 2-flat. Now I can get a conditional variance or whatever they call it to take it to 4 units if it's a big enough building. But I can't take mine from a 2 to a 3. I can't take mine from a 2 to a 4 because I'm not zoned for that. They want to take something that's zoned for a 2, get a conditional variance or whatever to go to 4, and then make it 8. So you're going to have 8 units in there at 2 bedrooms apiece. You could have up to 45 people living in there. I mean, that would be a lot of people, but if you had a family with 3 children, you put 5 people in each one, you got 40 people, and that'll be at least 2 cars, family, maybe 3 or 4. And you talk about the curbs on our street. We don't have curbs on our street. You can't tell where the sidewalk begins and ends at the VFW there. It's all paved together. There's no curb. So, and Whiskey's the bar at the corner. I've lived there for like 14 years now, and I'm accustomed to it. I mean, it's not bad living across the street from the bar, because at the end of the evening at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the evening, they go home, and it becomes my quiet neighborhood again. So it's a quiet neighborhood, but I can't take my house and turn it into a 3-flat or a 4-flat. Why should you be able to take a two family unit and make it a 4 with the variance and then turn it into 8? That just doesn't make any sense to me. So I guess I look at it and say, I'm opposed to this, obviously, because I look at it and I say, this is an opportunity to bring all these additional people, 40 more people on my street, and then you got that green space back there. It will not stay green. It'll be at least 3 or 4 more units back there. So now we've got 100, 150, 120 people into that vicinity. And right now on Friday nights and Saturday nights when we have a wedding at Whiskey's, which is great for them, I love it. It's nice that people have weddings there, that's great. But our street becomes a 1-lane street with all the cars parked on both sides. It's a 1-lane street. And now you're gonna have all these apartments in there, some more cars and kids and whatever. It just makes no sense whatsoever. So my question is this to the commission here, that explain to me so I understand how you can go from a 2 to an 8. Makes no sense. I mean, clearly what they want to do is they want to develop a revenue stream, but then they can take the revenue stream and then go and continue to develop the rest of the area. The rest of that area will not stay green. I think the park's a great idea, but it'll never happen because they will put apartments back there. And it's a quiet neighborhood, from Main Street to Oregon back in there. It's quiet, and it doesn't need to be turned into and we've got enough vacant apartments in this town already. Find a location to do some development, but not in the middle of a quiet neighborhood. That just makes no sense whatsoever. So, and the last thing I'd like to say, the building doesn't meet the setback. We've already said that's in the materials right here. The building doesn't meet the setback. So now you want to make an exception for a sign that's not going to make the setback either. So having a setback, there's a reason for a setback. And that building was put there. I mean, you can't shove the building back. You can't change that. But putting another sign out in front of it that even more encroaches on the setback makes no sense whatsoever. So it looks like to me when I look at this, one exception after another exception after another exception after another exception. And I know this was recommended to come to this group. I'm going to recommend that, this is an example of, a bad idea in a wrong location. That's my say.
Thank you very much, sir. You've already had your shot, so I think we got most of the flavor. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Okay, back to the commission, lots to wrestle with here.
How many, in the original unit that was behind the bar area, how many units were?
I looked through the assessor's records, and the best I can tell, it looks like it was either a 4 or 5 unit. The records aren't really good for what that building was. It looked like it was anywhere from 4 to 5.
Steve?
On the assumption at some point there could be more units built back there, which means probably children. Have we talked to the school district because of the impact it could have on Smith School, which is what, a block?
Right across the street.
Across the street.
Yeah.
For the 8 units now, no. I think if something with higher unit count was proposed back there, would definitely need to be a discussion.
I would propose that we sit down and talk to the school district about this.
It does get our, they're aware of when these things are moving forward.
Kathy?
So what's the maximum
So under the-
density that,
The
that
neighborhood,
that we could have in this neighborhood mixed-use district with our plan?
neighborhood mixed-use district allows 4-unit buildings.
Okay,
So this application could, I mean, theoretically, that building could turn into 2 buildings, and it would meet code today under the neighborhood mixed-use district. In terms of a maximum density, I don't know in the neighborhood mixed-use.
well, it could be 4.
It could be 2 4-unit buildings, and it would meet
Conditional
code.
use permit. It's conditional use permit.
Conditional use, yep, they could go through a conditional use for up to 4-unit buildings.
Per building, but.
Per building.
What you're looking at is the density.
Why are there,
You want a
what are you
density.
talking about, 2 buildings?
So the reason they're requesting the base standard is this district says number of units per building.
Yeah, but what's the 2 buildings part?
So, for example, if they wanted 8 units, they could have 2 4-unit buildings through a conditional use and not need a base standard modification.
So I think, Kathy,
Okay.
are we, what I feel like Kathy might be asking, maybe what I'm interested in, is, or at least to address, what is the maximum number of units
Got a calculator.
for the site? What is the max density?
Just a second, we'll run some math here.
If you want, I can just keep
Yeah, yeah, for the
dropping words
giant site.
until you figure that out. and
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can filibuster for as long
You're
as,
talking the
don't have my
entire
phone.
parcel of land, every,
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Yeah, if it
understand,
was
yeah.
built out to its max,
So how many
Right,
units
right,
can
if-
go on
1.6
that
acres.
Yeah, so it's 1.6 acres, right? So what are we at on in the NMU district,
43,560
on a, per acre basis, and how does that work out?
divided by 1,200.
Start reading the phone book for you if you want.
58
58
units
units
would be the maximum.
would be the
density.
maximum capacity of the site permitted with no,
Not necessarily, no, conditional, remember, it's conditional use.
Through a conditional use.
right, through a conditional use to allow more than 4 units per building.
No, to allow multifamily buildings. So 3 to 4 unit buildings would require a conditional use.
Got it.
So they could do a conditional use for, say, 5
Right.
4-unit buildings or something.
Yeah, okay. Got it.
Right. Next, who wants? Kath?
I have to say that bothers me. I could go with what's proposed here. Don't know that that's gonna be terrible, except I would like more landscaping along the east. I don't know why there's 0 landscaping there, and there's only landscaping down in the green area where there's nothing there anyway. It would make it look better to have landscaping down there, but I need landscaping on the east. But I'm quite bothered by the fact that this could later come back and we would be, I don't know if we'd be forced to put something on that land.
Would be, if they try to do anything in the future, it would have to be a standalone application, and we'd have to weigh the merits of it. I can't say if staff would support it either, if they
Right.
try to do something back there.
I mean, the issue is with what the state did to us with conditional use permit.
That's right, conditional use permit, and then you have to do it, and,
You have to approve, correct.
yeah, forget that.
Unless we
So I'm not, I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not comfortable given all that because of the potential use of that interior land.
Ed? I'm sorry.
Kathy, I think you makes a good point there, and I hadn't really given that a lot of thought prior to reviewing this, but the more that I think about it, I don't necessarily know that that makes a lot of sense either. The piece that I think gave me a little bit of heartburn here is just the general aesthetic of it, or I guess lack thereof, if maybe that's I hope that's not too rude to say it that way, but I mean, sub G of the plan development findings is that the proposed architecture and character of the proposed plan development project is compatible with adjacent nearby development. You don't even need to look at, nearby development, literally adjacent, in as much as these 2 buildings are being smashed together here, they're not compatible with each other. There doesn't appear to have been any effort made to make them compatible architecturally, make them relate to each other, whether it's in style or material or scope or scale or anything along those lines. And while I try not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good when we evaluate certain things, this just doesn't make any sense to me. This is putting a football and a basketball together and still trying to call it a ball. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I think that's why I asked earlier, I think I could get comfortable with approving a PD. I could get comfortable with the concept of adding some sort of 8-unit building to the existing former VFW main structure, but it's not that building design. And I don't know what building design it is, to be honest with you. So I guess I'm going to hang back and maybe see what the pleasure of the board is, but my thought might be to approve the first two components and vote separate, or do the first two components and then separate out the third. I don't know. Or I could just vote no on everything. I don't know. Or we could table it. I mean, if there's enough heartburn at this table of, what sort of unanswered questions we have here, we could certainly table this. I'd be open to that as well. So.
Is there any historical, architectural
It's filibustering again.
regulations associated with the VWF hall?
No, it's not any historic structure.
How was the original? I know you said there was limited information on
So
the
the-
original structure that burned down.
So the structure that burned down was
Wood frame.
a wood frame vinyl sided
Similar to this.
structure. It was
No,
similar.
it
It
had
was even more kind
It
of.
was,
a gable
it was a
roof.
very
Yeah, it had
ugly
a
yellow
gable.
building.
Yes.
It was.
It
It
was.
was a very ugly yellow building. Let's
It
just
was,
cut
it
right
was
to
bad.
it.
It was bad, right? It was bad. I'm not saying they
Looked
should
like it
create
had
something that wasn't
It wasn't
there.
insulated, and it was terrible.
It was basically a big square building with a
The
gable.
building that survived the fire is 1950s.
And the stuff that went up in flames because it was built very
Poorly.
cheaply and poorly, and
Yeah. Yeah.
Boy, I get a great outlook, now. It's another
Basing our
thing, we're
work on
just
ugly, yeah.
sticking it on and.
Thoughts?
I'd like to
John?
say I'd be in favor of tabling this also. I think also we need to hear from the developer.
Yeah.
Or we need more input. I mean, we have questions that I think the developer needs to answer. I think
Yeah, that's true.
more than a few of the people here do, so I would support tabling it.
And I personally, I think tabling is the nice thing to do because there's
Yes.
enough.
I don't
here-
wanna vote no
There's
on
enough
anything,
here
right?
there's enough here for me to vote no. But, so I think
Like
tabling
the
is a
idea,
nice
just
thing.
don't like the implementation, I think is where a lot of us are at.
I kind of reluctantly agree with Ed.
What are you, Dave Borsick now?
But
Come
I do
on.
agree with you on, as far as what they're proposing for that building is not something that I would like to see. I mean, it's just a mishmash of pieces, as far as I'm concerned, so I'm for tabling it too.
It's a unique neighborhood with a unique lot, requires a unique solution. To me, that's not it.
I would like to ask staff how long we should table this for.
What, we're just talking about that. I think.
I'll
what-
continue to filibuster.
No, I think we're just talking through is table it a meeting, table it 2 meetings, maybe table it without putting a specific number on it, because it
I
sounds
think
like
without
you're-
a specific
I-
number.
Your
You kinda- I
concerns
think you
seem
table
large
it
enough that I
indefinitely.
think we need the applicant,
No,
so.
the clock is running here, so.
Oh,
so
yeah, it does.
We have
We
a
have to.
requirement that we have to take it to action within X amount of days.
Unless
So
they
my
can waive
recommendation
it.
is that we table it for 2 meetings, we come back the next meeting with a workshop, have a workshop on it, then out of that meeting, we come to the next plan commission meeting with a vote.
I make a motion for that.
Second that.
Okay, it's been moved that we table it for 2 meetings.
Whatever that
And
is.
seconded. Any discussion on that motion?
That's all.
Listen, don't-
Okay, call the roll, please.
John Hintz,
Aye.
Robert Weigert,
Aye.
Thomas Perry,
Nay.
Andrew Mott,
Aye.
Kathleen Pratt,
Aye.
Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Steve Cummings,
Aye.
Tom Foytak,
Aye. Motion passes 7-1.
motion passed 7-1.
Item 5A, zone change from suburban mixed-use district to suburban mixed-use district with plan development overlay, and approval of a general development plan and specific implementation plan for property located at 2322 Jackson. Pardon me, 6A.
Okay, so we have two petitions related to the same project. This development originally came into the city under just a site plan review element. They thought they could meet the standards, submitted hoping to move forward with a building permit within the SMU district. Through that review by the planning department, there were a couple of deficiencies that the developer could not overcome. To answer those questions, they've decided to try to seek a zone change from SMU to SMU PD to address those deficiencies that they couldn't meet. And then they can kind of try to justify for this body why they can't meet those couple of deficiencies, and we'll outline them as we go forward here. Item B is an access control variance, but we'll get into that a little further as we go through here. So here we have the subject site. It is corner of Jackson and Smith. It is a largely commercial corridor, obviously up and down Jackson Street. We have 3 parcels that are included within this zone change. 2 presently have commercial structures on it, and the third is basically just a large gravel lot. It does not have a structure. We do have single-family residential kind of to the southeast and northeast of the proposed development. So here we have the aerial. As I said, we have kind of 2 structures existing, and then we kind of have just this gravel lot on the northern parcel. Applicant is proposing to rezone all 3 of those parcels to suburban mixed use with the plan development overlay. So here we have the site plan for the property, and we can discuss a little bit, I guess, first and foremost, why they're applying for the plan development. So there are basically 2 main factors that they couldn't get to work when they were trying to lay out this site. The first was the lot width. They couldn't meet the front yard setback requirement, the area they needed for the pump islands, parking, and building, plus the 10-foot side yard setback that then came into play. The applicant's down to about 7.8 feet there. They couldn't get the numbers to work with meeting our parking standard dimensions, drive aisle dimensions, and still fitting their canopy on there. So the first base standard they're asking for is to reduce that 10-yard setback by just over 2 feet to, like I said, it's about 7.8 feet. The second is our code requires that a loading space, basically your truck delivery space, cannot be located within 50 feet of a residential zoned property. The applicant tried finding a way to put it on the north side of the building, put it on the south side of the building. They shifted the building up and down. There's no place they could fit it on the lot that would meet the 50 feet. So the applicant discussed with the staff is what would possibly be a best alternative. Right now, what they're proposing is a base standard modification to be within 50 feet of a residential district, but they've tried to push it back and line it up with the garage of the neighbor next door, trying to keep it as back far away as they can, but again, they still can't meet that 50 feet. So that is something this board will have to weigh as whether or not it's appropriate. Any commercial development on this site, in all likelihood, would need that base standard one way or another. Whether the Plan Commission is comfortable with the location they've chosen, that's a discussion that you should probably have today. So they are proposing a new Casey's General Store. So it's a convenience gas station, kind of similar in nature to a Quick Trip style. It's not your, I don't want to say low-end gas station, but it's kind of in the middle where they provide a little more fresh food. They do like sandwiches and subs and fresh pizza, some of those things, in conjunction with the fuel sales. So then we have a fuel canopy island and dumpster enclosure associated with the property. They will need 3 access control variances for this to work. The first access control variance would be to allow a driveway off of Smith. Smith Street, as you're heading east, turns into a local street when it gets to the east side of Jackson. It still maintains 4 lanes and looks and feels like a collector street or arterial would, but the classification at that point becomes local. Commercial development are not allowed access drives onto a local street. Staff discussed with the Department of Public Works, and really there's a feeling there, yes, it may be classified as a local street, but it still functions as more than local street at that point. So we would be comfortable with that access control variance. Second would be they cannot meet, and the existing development there today does not meet their spacing requirements from the driveway to the north. They're only about 25 feet now, and they'd maintain about that 25-foot separation from the north. And then finally, they would need a lateral throat clearance variance for the access drive along Smith, as they do have parking immediately off of it. The code requires the 75-foot throat clearance, as we've seen in a lot of petitions. This petition, similar to a lot of ones we've held in the past, this area doesn't really meet that requirement, and it's not necessarily a necessity at this location to have 75 feet. They're at about 30 feet, which should be sufficient for a throat clearance for this type of development. They do have, the staff report has 25 parking spaces. Doing a little more investigation, the site plan and the table didn't match up, and it's actually only 23 parking spaces. They only are required 20, so they are still above their minimum parking requirement and are staying below the maximum. So the base standard that I was actually recommending is no longer going to be needed, because I was basing it off 25 in the table. 23 gets them to meeting their 1.25 requirement. So then, again, getting into the base standard modifications, we kind of did already discuss this kind of portion directly behind the building where they're asking to reduce the setback. They are proposing a fence along this property line that kind of wraps then around. Stormwater management plans have been provided to the Department of Public Works. The applicant is having ongoing discussion with the Department of Public Works regarding those. Final stormwater development plans will be required as part of the final site plan review process, but they are generally in conformance. One additional item on this is Department of Public Works is requesting an easement to be granted along the southeast corner of the development, or kind of the ADA sidewalk and kind of the light poles and utilities. Mr. Godey can probably elaborate better than I can on the conditions that exist in this corner. But we discussed this with the applicant, and they didn't see too much of an issue with granting those easements to make sure we can make some improvements if needed to that corner. Steve, we'll get to Steve in a minute if we can. In terms of landscaping, the applicant has recorded 123 points of foundation landscaping. They are exceeding that with about 159, so they do meet all the foundation landscaping requirements for the building. Paved area screening, again, they meet all of their paved area screening requirements. Street frontage requirements, both along Jackson and Smith, are being met in terms of number of landscape points required. The applicant is requesting a base standard modification related to buffer yard screening. So similar to the last application, they are required buffer yard screening for the entirety of this area, because it is residential. The applicant is intending to remove everything from this rear portion of the site, turn it back to grass, and they would like to just allocate their landscaping along the area that would be visible, and then fence along the southeast corner as well. When you total up the points that are provided, it doesn't meet the total requirements as if you had to put it all the way around the area, because they're kind of just shielding more directly along the building. So staff is in support of that. They're meeting the intent because they're just gonna landscape kind of a smaller area to directly impact shielding of the building through both evergreens and overstory trees. So it's gonna give the same visual barrier as if you did it all the way around the outside. So they really do meet that intent. The one area no landscaping is presently shown is this little sliver behind the building. It's tough to fit landscaping within that small area, but the board could consider maybe trying to get some shrubbery or something, but there is a fence directly along that property line, so shrubbery, you probably wouldn't be able to see it either way. They are then trying to screen the south side where the view of the loading and building are gonna be from the residential area to the east. So they are kind of significantly landscaping this kind of southeast corner of the property. Moving on to some building elevations. Here's the front and rear elevation of the building. The building is clad in mainly brick and stone along the front and side facades, and then the rear facade would be an alternative material. Building facades in commercial development, the front and sides do have to meet the requirement of 50% Class 1 material, and the applicant does meet that in this case. Refuse enclosure. The current refuse enclosure consists of a chain link slatted fencing that does not meet code. Staff is recommending a condition be placed on it that they do need to meet that code requirement. I discussed this with Casey's. They understand they need to change it out to either a wood fence or a brick fence that matches the building code. It allows you either wood or materials that match the building. They can't use the chain link vinyl. So they have been made aware of that. We'll handle that as part of final site plan review. In terms of signage, here are the other kind of the side elevations for the building. And then finally signage. This plan has been updated since that elevation plan you saw earlier. Those signs on kind of the right and left side have been removed to get them under the maximum allowed signage. They're allowed about 110 feet of wall signage. This comes in under that requirement. And they are allowed about 100 square feet of pylon signage. So here we have wall signage along the canopy. That meets code as well. And finally, we do have the 25-foot pylon sign. Comes in at just over 80 square feet, so they're about 20 square feet below the maximum allotment for that as well. So, recommending approval, subject to the findings listed above and several conditions. First would be conditioning on the approval of the access control variances, which we will handle as a part of a separate item. CSM to combine the 3 parcels into a single parcel. Granting of an easement at the southwest corner for the sidewalk and utility as approved by the Department of Public Works. Final code compliant refuse enclosure be part of the final site plan review process. Base standard modification to reduce the 10-foot side yard setback along the east side of the building to 7.9 feet. Base standard modification to allow loading within 50 feet of a residential district. Base standard modification, so number 7 is no longer needed now that they're down to 23 parking spots. They actually meet that part of the code requirement. Number 8, their current lighting plan exceeds the .0 candle light at the 2 drive entrances. Discussion with DPW, they're okay with the aesthetic being exceeded and a little of extra lighting going into the street. Against all of the residential and neighboring properties, they meet their 0.5 requirement. So staff is recommending a base standard modification be allowed to exceed the candlelight level at the drive entrances only. And then a base standard modification to reduce the required 2,000 landscaping points to 215 along the eastern property line. And then 6 additional screening trees as shown along the facade. And they have actually added those to the plan. If I can back up here. So they have added the 6 additional trees along this side of the building. So that 215 has been increased by about another 180, between 180 and 200 points, depending on the exact species they use here. And I think that was the last one.
All right, is that it?
We can talk, do you want to do the staff report right away for the access control variance?
Yeah, let's do that. As long as let's do that.
I outlined it a little bit for you already, but so they do need the 3 access control variances. The first being to allow a Class 2 driveway along Smith because Smith is a local street. It functions as more than a local street, so Department of Public Works is okay with that. Reduce the driveway spacing of 25 feet along the north where the code requires 125. That's basically meeting the same as what the driveway there today is, so there'd be no real change to the area. And then reducing the lateral clearance along West Smith from 30 feet from 75 feet. That's going to be consistent with what other commercial developments in the area have. We do recommend approval of that access control variances as well.
All right, technical questions then either. Kathy?
I guess this isn't technical. Right, at this point, east side,
Yes.
horrible. And that's the side that the single and 2-family, or maybe they're all single-family residences have to look at. It's gonna take probably more than those landscaping trees. That's horrible. Part of that, I think you said would be screened with a fence.
So there's going to be a fence along a portion of it, and then you're going to have evergreen
And
trees.
I would hope the fence goes up a good way into that gray, that ugly gray.
So right now they're proposing a 6-foot fence.
Okay.
So I
Which
don't
is
know if they've
probably
got.
the maximum height. Maybe that's a third of the way up then?
I would say you're probably
Might
looking at
screen most of
something.
the mechanical,
You know, that ish height.
maybe there. Okay, that'll help. Anyhow, I don't know what we can do about it, but the other facades are nice, you know, for a commercial building. Why that one is so bad. Then I have questions about the, what's going on the south side of the property. Is that a landscaping? Yeah, that.
This?
Yeah, that, and then on the other side also,
So
what's going on here
This
on
is
that whole corner?
This is landscaping around their pylon sign. So their pylon sign is here.
Okay,
So they're showing landscaping around. This is part of their stormwater management.
that's what?
It's part of their
Stormwater?
stormwater
Oh,
management.
okay.
Yep. Within landscaping around it.
Landscaping around it.
Is that a bioswale or is that a pond or?
I'll leave that to Steve and the applicant.
Okay.
The applicant may be able to give you a better answer. I don't recall off the top of my head if that's what particular feature that is.
We'll get to that when we get to the public comment. Steve?
We've talked about this at a lot of meetings as far as the architectural integrity, what's being built in the city, raising the bar. This looks like something we'd approved 25 years ago. It's just a box. We can either be serious about our architectural standards or just let more nondescript boxes get built in the city. You know, all these chains have their A plans and B plans and C plans. This is probably at the bottom of the barrel of the C plans.
Just one note on that, the building itself, now we gotta put the PD on the side, because the PD gives us more flexibility, because they're asking for us something that they can't get, so we can negotiate certain things. From a building code perspective, the from the zoning and design standards perspective, it would meet our new design standards, because you have all this class 1 material. I understand what you're saying with design, roof lines and things like that. But from a design perspective, which I think we're miles ahead of where we were 5 years ago if you look down the road. But you're right, if you look at our new, with our corporate business park with the strong middle top, would it be in keeping with that? No. This is a PD, you have some options to discuss though.
All right, other technical stuff? All right, anyone here from public to speak to this item? Come on up, sir, and then ma'am. Come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Swanson. I'm with ARC Design Resources, here on behalf of Casey's. I'm here to answer any questions, of course, but I do have a few things just to address.
Go right ahead.
After the presentation, which was good. The truck area, that area is strictly for, essentially for the Casey's delivery trucks, which come from their distribution centers about once a week. So really, that's the frequency that those would get, that area would get used. So it's very infrequent. The tanker trucks would be located at the north end, where the underground tanks are located. So we have tried to minimize any impacts to neighbors. We did, as Mark mentioned, we did shift the building north. Part of the issue we ran into just internally, which also relates to architecture as well, but inside these stores, there's a certain operation layout that works. In the time that we've worked on these for the last 8 years, there's been 3 different modifications, and in terms of where the kitchen is, where the registers are, where different features are. And they've landed on this one. This is the 3rd iteration. Basically, they have to bring merchandise in that south end of the store where you see that door. So the trucks offload directly into that door, and then there's the stock room, storage room, and then the kitchen. So it's all integrated together. We did talk to them extensively about trying to bring merchandise in the north end, and it was not possible based on their configuration. They've done many stores of this type, this being their newest prototype, and they just, actually this corrected an issue they had with the last one. So we have to bring them in essentially that south side. They don't mirror buildings like some retailers will do, mirror their stores. They don't do that. So it's very specific to the kitchen and the layout of this, but it's fairly infrequent. It's about once a week that you'd see a truck in there. So I wanted to point that out. In terms of the questions that came up, the area to the south, that is kind of Yeah, thank you. That is kind of a stormwater, really a water quality feature that we see at this point. Kind of a bioswale. Really, that's really what's intended for that. So be a little depression area surrounded by the landscaping. So that's what that is intended for. There's also another little area on the other side of the driveway that we'd use in a similar fashion. Yep, right, yeah, exactly. So really just water quality features is what they are for stormwater runoff. In terms of architecture, the elevation, that rear material, this illustration, the coloring of it is difficult between what the architects put out and what they publish. It's just hard to sometimes hit it, but that rear color is more of a rich tan, more similar to the walls here, kind of a richer, a little bit darker hue than the walls in here. So it's not the gray, and I've got actually a sample that I should get tomorrow. It's by coincidence, but this illustration doesn't really do it justice. It's a tan that really matches, blends with the brick colors and the stone colors. In terms of architecture itself, this store has the elements as mentioned. It's all stone and brick on the other three sides. It's got a cornice feature on top. It's got articulation. It has windows. It's got the elements, and you're not going to get a customized building from really any retailer. It's expensive to come into any given site and completely, as I mentioned, with the layout issues and the floor plan issues, very similar. They know what works for them, and aside from some changes on the exterior with materials, things like that, the overall shape essentially stays the same. So this, again, with the shielding and cornices, decorative lighting as shown here, you can see on all four sides. Actually, the rear is typically just for security purposes, but very high quality brick and stone materials. So I just want to address that as well. And then the signage, we did reduce that as well, so kind of I think cleans up that front facade a little bit better. With that, I'm answering any other
Questions for petitioner? Go ahead, Kath.
Yeah, staff said the red ends of the sign are being reduced. You said that too, or is that
The two signs you see there that say pepperoni, and I can't tell you what that other one says.
I'm talking
have
about
been
the Great
removed.
Big Casey's, the Great Big Casey's sign on top, will it be that size?
So that is the sign they're currently proposing. That is under the code requirement.
That meets code, okay. And so then you were talking about
Those two things they had on the sides were removed.
Oh, okay.
I have a question. No, I know you brought up about the fence in the back. 6-foot fence. I'm assuming it's probably going to be about the same height as the top of the electrical.
Yeah, approximately.
I'm guessing that's about 6 feet.
You're
up.
probably about right, roughly.
So that should cover pretty much the whole.
That would help.
Mhm.
But it only covers part of the building in the back, and the rest of it, I mean, there's
Correct.
landscape, there's
The
trees.
trees, the evergreens and the shade trees, correct. Correct,
So
so it'll be a
the
mix.
6 trees are evergreens?
Oh, yes, I believe so. I can confirm that, but I think it was a mix of deciduous shade and then the evergreens as well. They're not weekends.
Yeah, so the smaller ones.
Yeah, the ones they added.
These are
Yes.
evergreens,
Okay.
and then
Scotch.
the larger one
Scotch pines.
are the deciduous, the shade trees.
Other questions for the petitioner? Ed?
In your experience working with working with Casey's, I'm assuming you do these nationwide for them and have rattled off a number of these. Can you go back to the elevations, Mark? One of the things that I guess I'm not sure of, it looks on the sort of the base of the front elevation, it looks like there's a course of vertical brick that breaks up, sort of runs horizontally, maybe a foot off the ground or something like that. It looks like there's a course of vertical brick that runs through. Is that a different color? Is that a different orientation?
It's what they call soldier course, which
Right.
stands up. There's two layers of that, one along the base, as you just mentioned, and then one
on the top.
about 2/3 up, yep.
Is that their standard? Is this their standard prototype facade?
They're preferred, yeah, it is.
do they have standard elevations that have more of a defined base, potentially like below those windows, kind of below that window level, whether it's like a knee wall or something along those lines? Do they have you, in your experience, I'm not asking in the world, in your experience, have they done a facade that defines that lower level of that facade any more than just that soldier course of brick?
No, and it's something we're with another site here in town we're trying to address. But basically, what I have seen, to answer your question, no, directly, I have seen where the soldier course is a different color. That's been done. But with that example, there used to be on the older stores a component of ephes with the stucco material. Basically, where that next layer of soldier course is up, that was ephes, and then the stonework wasn't there at all. So really, what they've added is all brick, and then the stone columns were a brand new feature. So they've kind of added the vertical elements, if you will. But to answer your question, no, we have done some other things, but it was really with that older store with the ephes component that they used to have.
Other questions for the petitioner? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
for your help. Anyone else here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, ma'am.
Ardeen Berry, and I live directly across on 307 West Smith. The driveway that they want to access for delivery is directly across from my driveway. And we pay for all the street upkeep, and I'm wondering with trucks coming in and out, how that's going to affect the street, and then do the residents pay for the repair on it? The other thing, I dealt with Quick Trip for probably 15 years, right directly side of me. The big issue is the lighting. It shines in your house constantly, 24 hours a day. In fact, we had to take one of our windows out and put a little one in because it was so bad. So the lighting is an issue. The 24 hours in a quiet neighborhood, ones that are coming there to use it, do not realize that some of us are trying to sleep, and it gets very noisy. Frankly, it's a big hassle, and frankly, the back of that is pretty ugly for us to look at. You know, the front looks nice on Jackson, but the side that faces us is like a warehouse back. It's crummy, to be honest with you. So I'm definitely not in favor of rezoning that so they can have access to the driveway on Smith.
Next.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Susan Coonan. I'm at 304 West Smith.
Hi.
So I'm directly behind the building. And I would like to know what the width is between the back of that building and my garage.
It's about 7.8 feet to their property line. do you know how far your garage is from your property line?
My garage is about 2 feet from my property line. Where my back fence is,
Okay.
that's my property line.
So in total, it'd be 9 feet, 8.
Oh, from the garage? And
Yep,
then,
from the actual garage wall to where they're proposing their building would be about 9 feet, 8.
Okay, and then my fencing in the backyard, that would be a little less. You say like about 6 or 7 feet?
Right now, they're showing 7.9. This
Okay.
corner might actually be 7.8 to the property line.
Okay.
From building to property line, and they're proposing to put a fence along their side as well.
Okay, now, how are they going to be able to trim the weeds between their fence and my fence?
Traditionally, those fences are put directly on the property line.
Okay, so right next to it. All right, and then what about all my trees that go from Smith up to the garage? I have trees. The trunks are on my line, but, you know, they're mature trees.
Here.
Yes. Will they want to cut them?
Technically overhang, it's not gonna cut
And
it.
technically, if they overhang the lot line, they would be within the right to trim them back to the property line.
Okay, is that a city ordinance?
Yes. That would be part of the standard city code, that if you have something that's extending over the property line, same would be true if it was your neighbor to the east. If your trees overhang, they would, I'm not saying they're going to, that's something you can probably definitely discuss with the applicant.
Okay, other people have questions, so
Okay,
thank you.
very much, ma'am. Who's next?
I live at 234 West Smith. My name is Janice Potratz. Yep. Are you going to replace all the fences? I don't know where I am up there, but we have a fence in the back, and I have dogs that aren't leashed up, and that's their yard. So,
Right now, the applicant is only showing on their property line a fence
'cause
along
I think it's gonna go all the way to
here,
the back, right?
here. Their fence is right now proposed to end here.
Yeah.
Right now, they're only showing fencing from this point across and down to about here. That is all the fencing they're proposing right now.
Okay. Grade back to matching joint yards. This is my husband's question.
Yep.
Match joining yards, field, tile back to keep the drain. He's wondering about drainage, because we all have water sitting right now. We have 4 pumps going, because we had a bunch of snow just dumped in our backyard, and it just sits there, it doesn't go anywhere. So they're wondering about drainage back there.
Steve, they'll have to have final drainage plans approved that will keep it on site, correct?
Jump up and answer that one real quick. The green area in the back is a little tough. Hopefully, they've got it graded so that it can drain out to the west. I don't know that there's any storm sewer or anything being proposed put back there, but at least with this new development, they won't be pushing snow back in the back, so you should have a less impact, and all the downspouts and everything will have to be directed to the pavement to be collected, so you'll have less impervious area impacting you back there.
Okay. And that's all I had.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you, ma'am.
Mhm.
Who's next? Anyone else to speak to this item today? Oh, go ahead, ma'am. And it's
Just one
up-
question, the fencing,
Oh, you have to get to the mic, otherwise the public can't hear you.
309 Bacon, and my name is Cindy Asen. Right, currently, there's fencing around that entire perimeter. So this is an entire residential area. Our neighbors, all the way down the block, it's fenced. So they're proposing to take that entire fence out, and we have nothing?
Right now, it looks like there's a significant amount of fencing that's kind of crossing property lines.
Correct.
Kind of every which way over here. You could ask the applicant, I'm not sure what their intent is, if they're just gonna leave all this fencing as is.
From our standpoint, it's green space.
Come on up and answer.
See this person.
Helps her out.
Thank you. The fencing essentially does, it's kind of a hodgepodge out there. It encroaches mostly everywhere onto the property. The north end there, it looks like it's maintained. We had just proposed, we're just gonna leave it alone. Unless something is deteriorating or whatever, it is on the property. So we can work with the neighbors in the city if something needs to be addressed. That's not a problem. The other thing on the drainage, I will say, and I had heard about the snow as well, the parcel adjacent to Smith in particular, but also to some degree as you head north, all of that drainage, essentially if you look at our western property line there, north, extended north, all of that will drain east now. The rooftop, everything else, or to the south little detention area. Right now, today, that building on the corner looks like it, from our survey, it drains east. So that will be redirected. The field in the back, it will just remain turf. That gently falls off to the east. We wouldn't change that, but we will, it's gravel in there. We'll change that over to turf. So it'll have a better, it'll be able to take water in better, and we're not taking anything further to that, but we are redirecting everything basically. And within our site envelope, our development envelope, everything will go to the west, then go through our water quality features. So I think we'll be improving that situation to some degree. We're certainly not making it any worse from what I've heard.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public to speak to this item today? Going once, twice? Okay, public comment is closed. Back to the commission, please. Kathy?
I'm confused about the fence. I went out and looked, but I didn't think about looking at a fence going way back. So,
Darren and I were just trying to look at it. It looks like right now, the neighboring property to the north fence comes down and encroaches onto the property. It looks like some of the fencing along this backside encroaches onto the property from the neighbors. This east fence looks like it belongs to the neighbors as well, and then it kind of wraps around the south, encroaching onto the development parcel, and then kind of slowly terminates as you go west and crossing back onto the private parties' parcels. Their fence is proposed, their new fence that they're proposing would be on their side of the property line, would come up and then stop approximately here. But it looks like most of those fences that are out there today, probably there's a mixture of encroachments going on.
okay, but in theory, it would be between the new fence and the old fences, if Casey's didn't care and left them there, the whole thing would be fenced. It might look a little strange. There might be a hodgepodge of styles.
It would really be civil issue between Casey's and those neighbors about how they wanted to handle those existing encroaching fences.
Theoretically, Casey's could take them down.
I think I heard Ryan say that they were in.
Yeah, it sounds like their intent is to leave it.
Yeah, okay, I get that, but
Until-
you don't have to.
Yeah, correct.
John?
Being that this is a planned development, would it be possibly a benefit to suggest that they could go to 8 feet with the fencing that is on that north-south stretch by the building? Just to help break it up a little more.
6 foot, I mean, you could
Which
allow,
side?
do it.
The north-south part that's running perpendicular to
We're
the
talking,
building.
yeah, that stuff right.
Increase
Yep.
this from 6 to 8.
Yeah, along the back of the building.
I just want to double check, make sure they couldn't go 8 by right before we grant the variance.
Right, that's,
Let's double check here quick.
We permitted 8 for the storage areas, or required 8 for storage areas, I can't recall.
If you want to ask other questions while I look this up.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kat.
you wanna? No, I was going to filibuster.
I have a question. Now think of it. Oh, the parking spaces on the south, right by the driveway.
Here?
Yeah, that seems to be, there'd be contact, people backing out of those spaces. I don't know how much they'd be used. Sometimes convenience store spaces
It's the lateral,
can
it's the
be
lateral
taken
clearance
up.
variance, correct?
Say that again?
That's the lateral clearance variance that they're requesting. I think, yeah, if somebody's backing out, if they come back here and a car's coming in, you're gonna have about that amount of space to deal with. If this car is backing this way, you're gonna block it, but you've got, what's that distance in there?
35 and
About 30.
35, so you got two car lengths before you get down to the curb, is that it?
So code would allow up to a 8-foot fence outside of the front yard. So in this area, let's see.
It's not the front, so.
We reviewed we reviewed what you were talking about, Kathy, and
Okay.
I think we looked at it, and I think we were okay with it, given the situation over here, that you're coming to a stop sign, coming to a controlled intersection.
Okay, all right.
Just trying to find their fencing detail here. It looks like 8 foot is allowed, so you could require them to go up to it.
Actually, I'd like to know if the petitioner would be amenable to that. I'm seeing him nodding, so.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same question. How far south does the fence go? The fence start about where your red,
So it looks like it goes down to about, I'm just trying to line it up with the landscaping.
About 25.
So it goes,
about
it goes to
30
about
feet.
here.
Starts about 30 feet, right?
Yeah. So I can't get the
Oh,
smallest
okay.
work exactly, but it goes to about right here.
so then the 8-foot potential
Goes to their front yard
fence-
setback line, which is where it has to terminate for that height of
8-foot fence then would go all the way up to where it
would go
makes a drastic turn.
would go up.
Okay.
And I believe if 8 fence is what you want, you probably want to put a condition on it requiring it to be 8 feet.
Nodding, so I'm thinking I'm gonna.
Other discussion, questions,
Let everybody
thoughts?
talk through.
People prefer to take these items one at a time or approve them all together, or not approve them all together? Art?
Keep all together. I would make a motion that we approve this with the change of the size of the fence to an 8-foot recommendation.
Yeah, you can replace 7 with that, so we took it out. I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve both of these items with inserting a new item 7 as a condition because the other one was taken out and this one just requires an 8-foot fence.
Right.
Spot that we. Okay, discussion on the motion, Kath.
Lighting. I know we don't approve the lighting plan, staff does, but the neighbor saying that light
So right now they're
terrible nuisance in general.
and I don't know what the existing site lighting conditions are. The applicant has provided a photometric plan, and at the property lines, the lighting level is indicated at less than 5 foot, or 1/2 foot candlelight, which is what our code requirement is.
Okay.
We are recommending a base standard because at these 2 drive entrances, if I can get this mouse to work, they do exceed it a little bit, basically right at the property line. They're at like between 1 and 2, and then as you actually get to pavement edge, they're below the 5.
That doesn't affect.
But
Okay,
that's
what about
here
the
and
south,
here.
that one?
Same thing here, they're at like 2 at the property line, and then by the time you actually get to the roadway, they're under the 1/2 foot candle.
Okay, so they meet code. All right.
Other discussion?
You gotta recall in the old, when Quick Trip was developed, we didn't have any of these codes in place.
Oh,
So we didn't
okay.
have the lighting codes. We've since lowered the lighting standards. You can't show an element anymore, a direct elements. They have to be full cutoffs. We've lowered it, so, you know,
Yeah, there's a
we've made
couple
lot of adjustments.
There's a couple of additional lighting standards that we have beyond just this 1/2 foot candle. For example, when the store closes, they must reduce it to an average of 3 foot candlelight over the entire property. So when the store closes, they have to significantly reduce it, and we require copies of those photometric plans. I know we've been working with the applicant to make sure they have that understood as well.
I think this is 24 hours though.
The store is not 24 hours.
When the store doesn't close.
Right now, they list this, their typical store hours are, I've got it in the staff report, I thought, till 12 midnight, the convenience store portion would close. The fuel sales, the canopy would remain open, you know, for credit card gas sales and whatnot. But when I spoke to the applicant, they indicated that typically these stores, they close the convenience portion of it at midnight.
But we could put a condition on the lower at 12.
Yeah, we could say we want it down to 3 foot candlelight at 10 o'clock at night, or
Any other thoughts, questions, discussions? Ed?
I disagree with Steve a little bit. Sorry, Steve.
I do too.
I do think from an aesthetic standpoint that there are some things about this that I don't love. I would like to see a more defined, not necessarily defined middle, bottom, middle, and top, but it seems like we've got a lot of class 1 materials here, which is excellent and fantastic, and I'm never going to argue about seeing all brick and stone. But it does seem like there's a lot of blank expanse of wall there that doesn't seem to be broken up in a real meaningful way The elevation here seems designed far more for economic purposes than it does aesthetic purposes, which it's a commercial building, and I understand that. And I'm not expecting a Frank Lloyd Wright building here by any means. So that said, I have no issue with this probably elevation on this particular site, but knowing that in our workshop that we were going to have tonight, and probably coming down the pike, there are going to be several more of these Casey's facilities that we're going to be looking at. I would probably want to put a bug in their ear to say that on those future sites that we are being told we're going to be looking at, that elevation is unlikely to cut it. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Very fair statement.
All right.
There's our architect.
I've spoken
over
my
there.
piece.
That's different zoning over there, too.
That's
Spoken my piece.
all right.
for the
Anything
night.
else? Anything else before we vote? Okay, let's vote.
This is
John
local
Hintz?
land.
Aye.
Robert Weigert?
All right.
Thomas Perry?
Yay.
Andrew Mott?
Aye.
Kathleen Pratt?
Aye.
Ed Bowen?
Aye.
Steve Cummings?
Aye.
Thomas Foytak?
Aye.
Motion carried, 7-1.
All right, moving on to our final item of business today. Approval of the city center corridors plan for 9th Avenue and South
Did
Park.
we, point of order, did we approve the control variances?
We were approving them both.
They were taken
Okay,
together.
all right, thank you.
That was the motion.
All right, corridors.
All right, the corridor plans. Mark's pulling it up. We sent you another copy. It should be as dog-eared as mine. You have all your little notes and stickies all over it.
Mine is on the old one.
I know you've read through it. Finally, we're bringing it to you. We've had it done for a while. With all that's going around, we haven't been able to spend time to bring it through. April 9th, we had a pretty good workshop with John Houseel came up. Houseel was here, and we invited the council. I think we had 3 reps from council. Traffic Review Board had a couple of members. And then we had the pedestrian and bicycling advisory committee was here. We had a really good workshop on the plan. If Mark could pull it up, it'd be a lot easier for me to go through.
Gas pumps all along.
There. Okay, there it is.
We did that.
All right, now I've got a
Been there
guy.
and done it.
All right,
Lemon
so.
Jeff, he didn't have it preloaded. All Jeff's fault.
So here's the city center corridors plan. Now, I won't be able to do this justice like John did. We can answer questions, I can do things, but I'm not as many times as I've read it, I still can't do as good a presentation as John did, but I'll try. Here's the city center's corridors plan for 9th Avenue and South Park Avenue. So here's the 2 corridors that we're looking at. And as you can see, we selected these corridors as part of that Imagine Oshkosh planning process that we were looking at. When we were doing the public outreach as part of those meetings, a lot of people were saying they were concerned about access into the downtown, and we need to do something about access. So we said, okay, well, this will be a secondary planning process that will work along with that Imagine Oshkosh plan. So we came out, we had Houseel do a plan for 9th and South Park Avenues coming in. Our idea is that eventually we're going to have corridor plans for all the major corridors coming into our center city. This is just the start. This is the start. We'd like to move on to Jackson, maybe Algoma, definitely Oshkosh. Oshkosh Ave, we started a little bit. So that's where we are with that. The purpose of the corridors plan is a guide for planning and policy decisions for future improvements to 9th Avenue and South Park Avenue, especially regarding land use, multimodal transportation, and an urban design framework. Time after time we hear you got to do something with your corridors, you got to have a plan, we got to have a plan to improve. This is that plan to improve those corridors coming in. The corridors, 9th Avenue. 9th Avenue is essentially a straight shot in from I-41. It's about 2.06 miles, and it's set, outside of Highway 41 and out on South Main. It's largely a residential corridor. It's got a lot of older residential in it, a lot of single family. Then you have those major those commercial nodes at Knapp, Ohio Street, and I'm probably missing one. South Park Avenue, it's a northeasterly route. It's almost a half, not quite a half mile longer coming into the community. It's a mixed-use corridor. You've got a hodgepodge of mixes, but you don't have those kind of major commercial nodes at Ohio and Knapp. This is how the plan lays out. As you can see, we have an intro. Then we go into 9th Avenue, existing land use, zoning districts. Same thing for South Park. Then we go into the land use and development framework, multimodal transportation network, urban design framework for each of those. Then we have an implementation section at the end. 9th Avenue corridor, this is just from the plan. The 9th Avenue corridor is comprised of a diverse range of land uses which transition as one moves along the corridor, and that is really evident as you go along it. Most of the parcels are residential. Other uses are interspersed throughout. This is one that's caused us a lot of concern, and why, part of the reason why some of the implementation items are such in this corridors plan. The 9th Avenue corridor includes residential areas of various qualities, including many houses that show signs of deterioration. As the city prepares the corridor to be a more prominent entrance into the center city, improvements to the appearance of the residential properties will elevate the character of the area, and there's some recommendations of what we should do, how we should do that. These homes are, they are the first impressions as you're coming into the community. I think Tom had some choice words for it when you came here. How many years ago?
35.
35 years ago. And I guess we haven't updated it much since that 35 years.
We have a CVS though.
We do have a CVS. A nice little CVS.
That's about it.
So here's the
Architectural wonder, I might add.
here's the hodgepodge of kind of zoning as you come into the downtown. You've got this interstate commercial, which is SMU, blending into some of these residential. That's institution, and then there's those nodes, those commercial nodes over there. Then getting back down into almost down into the downtown area, you start to see more. You start to see more commercial uses. Opportunity sites. These are some of the sites they looked at along the corridor that have some opportunity for change. Here's was that Harnex? Over here, you've got, this was, used to be Sisters, kind of sitting vacant. This is over here by the old Basler site, which is now, it's another car dealership. I forget what that is. Duo safety ladder, we certainly don't want to push those up, but we're saying that it's an opportunity. If we can transition them out, maybe transition something else in, and then you get down into the center city. We actually just talked about this one. So we're already doing stuff from this plan. A5 is, that's a Miles Kimball site. Multimodal transportation framework. This just kind of shows what the structure is. It's just basically we've got an arterial coming into the downtown. You've got Knapp Street becoming a collector. Ohio hasn't even reached the level of a collector yet. Oh, nor Oregon, because you haven't. Oregon looks like it could be a collector. With the amount of traffic counts coming in, I'll have to look at that. That might be a miss, because it shows we have 8,800. Roadway segments. Now in the plan, what we did as far as recommendation is that they broke it into different segments, and as you'll see in a minute, these different segments, we're recommending different lane configurations. So you can see various roadway segments 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is along 9th Avenue. We're proposing that we have this kind of lane, this kind of configuration along that route. I think the big changes that you're going to see that we started working on is that road diet on 9th Avenue. That's right here, where you have that one travel lane in each direction and that shared turning lane. We kind of want to do something like we did up on Murdoch. Now that people are kind of embracing what we've done on Murdoch, we want to look at doing it on 9th Avenue. This kind of shows the bicycle and pedestrian framework. Shows that there are linkages to 9th Avenue from our pedestrian and bicycle plan. What you don't see here is you don't see us calling out 9th Avenue as a bike route. When we designed our bike routes, it was not. We did it to keep them off of 9th Avenue because I thought it was too dangerous, too much traffic on it. When we designed our bike plan, it was for that moderate rider. The only problem you really do have a problem with, and we got to figure that out as a community, is getting across 41. Because you see this road getting across 41, you're taking your life in your hands, almost going up that with all those roundabouts. We need to find a way to get a dedicated pedestrian bridge across 41. Intersection configurations. What they're saying in the plan is that we need to reconfigure some of our configurations. and start doing some striping so people understand that there's a parking lane there. It's not a driving lane. Steve, feel free to jump in. You're part of this deal too at some point. If I'm saying something way out of line, that's
Correct, if you get too bad.
all right. Thank you. See? Too bad. I got some leeway.
Define too bad.
9th Avenue Urban Design Framework. Urban Design Framework provides recommendations to creating an inviting atmosphere. So when we talk in the plan, we have things talking about gateway signage, and we already did some of that. Wayfinding, crosswalk improvements. That's very important. Potentially, and we say this decorative. We're looking at that. We'd like to do something if we can make it work. Pedestrian amenities, street furnishings, buses, shelters, bus stops, screening and buffering. We talk about screening and buffering some of these parking lots that are just to try and soften them up. Surface parking improvements, public art. Maybe there's some locations that we can put some public art coming in. Overhead utilities. We're going to keep this in there. We'll keep putting underground these utilities because maybe at some point it's going to take. We've talked about, can we parallel the lines? Maybe we just parallel the lines, and so you get that spaghetti that's not going across the road. At least you can see down. So we want to look at that. Street lights, maybe decorative, a nice decorative path coming in that downtown area. Then some of that private stuff, facade improvements, rehab grants and loans. We want to develop some design guidelines similar to what we want to do along Oshkosh Avenue. So here, something did not. When I made this earlier this afternoon, this was down here, so something happened. So these are the urban design recommendations based on what I said. That's each symbol has a meaning in the plan. South Park, same thing. South Park is this the stretch coming in. You can see this heavy interstate commercial influence in this area. Then you just have that hodgepodge of different uses coming into town. You have a lot of these stable residential areas, but you do have some commercial. And you have a lot of mixed uses. You've got the quarry over here that has some influence. You've got South Park, which draws some people. You've got a school down there. And then we have, what we're calling in here in the land use plan, these transitional uses. This is an area where we see some ability to maybe change some land uses in the future. This transitional uses is this area in here. So looking at preferred transitional uses, maybe putting some high density residential in there, low intensity commercial retail. We don't want to see a big box, something that draws that many trips into there. Some professional offices, public and semi-public uses. Here's that transitional use kind of area, and we're focusing probably in here. That's where we have the biggest ability to make changes. Opportunity sites along South Park. Here are some of the opportunity sites that we see. Of course, you got Aviation Plaza down here, stuff on Ripon Lane. Then you get into that quarry, those transitional areas. Poklesny Funeral Home. I forgot what B7 is right now offhand.
Is that a church?
B7 was B7. I don't know what B7 is. I can't.
That's the church.
Church. Air zone impacts. The plan talks about how the air zone does affect development in the corridor. Here's the west end along South Park. Here's the air zone. The air zone is covering part of the Aviation Plaza. It really restricts what you can do with development in that area. It's really hampering to future development in that area. We want to take another run at taking a look at the air zone requirements and seeing if we can't change them. Things have changed now. So we're going to see if we can't do something, because if you look at a lot of airports around the country, they have a lot more development than we do, and they got a lot. And they're not a general aviation airport like we are. So I think we have the ability to create some change in here. Roadway improvement plan. Previous to 9th Avenue, we have various roadway segments. Pretty much we're proposing to keep this roadway segment the same up until about Oregon Street, and then moving down to roadway segment 2, which was that 2? Was that it have to be in the plan? You remember what roadway segment 2 was? Yeah, I think we had the biggest discussion at our workshop was on roadway segment 2. Should we make that into 2 lanes because you're moving traffic into the downtown area? And what we said, and City Manager Roloff talked a little bit about that. Maybe we just put a note that when the time comes, we change it from 2 lanes?
Right now it's shown as 1 travel lane The recommendation is one travel lane in each direction with parking.
Parking on either side. So what we're saying is maybe when the traffic situation changes, we get rid of some of that parking in favor of travel lanes if we're getting all that activity coming downtown. We're not proposing it at this point, just making a note in the plan. Well, there it is. There's the roadway segment. South Park Urban Design Framework. Just again, talking about the same thing along 9th Avenue, these kind of urban amenities. Here was the map showing all the various proposals. And then lastly, there's an implementation matrix of 54 items that are done by priority level, lead responsibility, cost estimate, tools and techniques, easily implementation. So you can see that with the Imagine Oshkosh plan, I think we're at 150 some items. With this one, we're down to 54. We're already looking at these implementation items. Now it's going to take some are going to take longer term, but we're already sitting down figuring out how we can implement some of these goals. So the next implementation: adopt and use the plans, review against the CIP, prepare a 5-year action plan to implement, update regularly every 3 to 5 years. And of course, explore funding sources. So with that,
What are you asking us to do as a commission?
Just what we plan on doing is, if you adopt it, we'll attach this as an addendum to the comprehensive plan process that's moving forward. So it'll become an addendum to the comprehensive plan. So we'll treat it like for consistency with the comprehensive plan.
So, is this a public hearing?
It's not public. You can open it up for public comment.
Well, there's nobody here. All right, so let's just open it up, commission thoughts. I mean, there's a lot of work's gone into this, and some people have been involved all the way along, so a lot of it won't be new, but for some people it will be. Thoughts, comments? Go ahead, Kath.
I think the plan is very carefully done, and I was impressed with the different segments and how they looked at it, and it sounds like they did talk to Public Works and had some negotiations.
Well, there's a lot of time spent on Public Works, I can guarantee you that.
Yes. The thing that I was struck by is the air zone. I guess I knew that the air zone was an issue, but in the workshop, it was pointed out more clearly, and that seems to be probably the red flag that I got out of this plan was, oh my gosh, we have to do something about it. No wonder that old site, retail site, the former Penny site, is not developing.
It holds it back, definitely.
And so anyway, I think it's a good plan. I hope we have the courage to implement it as various sites come in, because developers don't always, and homeowners don't like always to follow our idea of planning.
Correct, but we also say in the, one of the implementation items is try to figure out a way that we can help those properties coming in along 9th to kind of spruce up and do some curb appeal activities, create some facade improvement loans. So those are all things that are also in this plan too. So we like to use carrots and sticks to some extent. So wherever we can do both, we try.
My observation would be, I agree with Kathy. I do think South Park offers more opportunities just because there's more space and it looks nicer now.
Right.
I think 9th Street is a special kind of challenge, and with the setbacks the way they are, it's, even with, when we were looking at the Casey's, it's like when you have residential butt up against the commercial like that, I mean, I feel for the neighbors, but I'm like, well, it needs to be zoned the way, I mean, it's just, and 9th has some of those same kinds of problems.
Same issues that we had a little bit with CVS when we talked about that.
Thomas?
So, Darren, I know you're working with Habitat for Humanity, but this 9th Street would be great for year 2 or 3 of their Rock the Block program. Would be a great target for that program once they get the learning curve out of there.
That is a good idea.
Yeah.
What an I'm on Go H&I board. That is a really interesting idea. Steve?
I was going to say, all the gateways just happened too.
Flower reminder.
They just sort of country roads that all of a sudden became, when 41 became a highway, and all those commercial buildings on corners began life pretty much as grocery stores, meat markets, and saloons. I mean, that's kind of the evolution of all these gateways into our cities. So.
Go ahead, John.
I just want to throw out real quick, I'm really, really glad about adding the parking and the less busy sections of these. That's That's one thing, you hardly ever see the 4 lanes used down there as you get closer to the lake. And I think that's something that, especially with how much residential there is gonna be extremely beneficial to those communities.
And it slows down traffic.
And I think a lot of lanes that they're driving in now are parking lanes.
That's what we realized at the workshop. We were like, oh my God,
I didn't realize.
I've been driving in a parking lane.
They are?
Yeah.
I've been doing it.
Not 4 lanes.
We're proposing the stripe as part of this.
That's the problem
How
with
else
Ninth
am I supposed to
Ave.
ask people?
You've got the 4 lanes.
I've just learned something.
Technically,
Especially when slow
the
people stay in
right
the left lane.
lane.
Going to oncoming
could
traffic?
be-
I mean, I'll do it.
I mean, how rude is it to
But they
park
got
your
it, no
car
parking
on a
until
two-way?
such and such a time.
Yeah.
Put it parking all day long. Everybody park their cars in the lane, nobody have to worry about the traffic then.
All right, do we need a motion to,
Motion to adjourn.
Oh,
No.
Jumping the gun.
move to approve?
Oh,
Second.
Seconded?
second.
Any discussion on, all right. Call the roll.
Okay. John Hintz,
Aye.
Robert Weigart,
All right.
Thomas Perry,
Aye.
Andrew Mott,
Aye.
Kathleen Pratt,
Aye.
Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Steve Cummings,
Aye.
Thomas Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
The move is, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're done.
Real quick